Hello and welcome everyone to another fantasy film. Wait, another episode. Hey, first time. Another episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I don't know if anybody can tell, but I am losing my voice due to allergies or asthma. I'm not sure. So if I'm coughing a lot, I apologize. And I'm also here with the Roni award-winning author. Andy Peliquin.
Thank you, Steve. I remember being in Texas around this time last year, and that ragweed was just killing me. I'd never had allergies before, and I get there and I spent 3 days just in bed feeling feverish, and I had no idea why. And then someone told me, "Oh yeah, it's allergy season," and I had never been allergic before. I'd never been allergic since anywhere else.
It's always allergy season to me, coming from California. It's like, oh, well, the ragweed's gone. Now we got pine and cedar. And they didn't say allergy season. They probably said allergy season. Only I can say that. Just say, oh, and we are here with our guest author, the super talented and well-written Jesse Taylor. I say well-written as in he's written a lot of stuff. Say hello, Jesse.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here, guys. Thanks for including me.
And today we're mostly going to be talking about, I believe, life, right, Jesse?
Yeah.
That's the excerpt we're reading from.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting. I'm pretty proud of this one. As soon as you guys asked for an excerpt from the book, this is the first thing that came to mind. So.
Oh, this excerpt?
Yeah.
Great. Well, real quick, I do have some exciting news of my own before we start, and that is the Four Territories is in print. Yes. Yes. My first book in print. Quick story, I got it in the mail, and my hands were shaking, first of all, like when I was opening the package, and me and my girlfriend just basically sat on the bed for like 5 or 10 minutes, just like looking at it in her hands, like it's finally here. So, but I didn't realize how thick it was going to be. Like, it's heavy. I love the heaviness of it. It definitely dissuades me from wanting to write anything shorter. But he did an excellent job, the cover artist and the typographist. But
How's the color balance? Amazon often makes the covers darker.
I had the typographist brighten it, and it's perfect. Okay. It's awesome. Still a little dark, but to me it's perfect. It's my baby. And I highly suggest the matte. It's very, very nice. And the yellow, the cream, is not yellow like people say. It's actually very nice. So it's 5x8, cream, matte finish. And it's, if you want to go through Amazon KDP print distribution, I highly recommend it. Okay.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I haven't told my mom yet, which, you know, she I think our moms are all of our #1 fans, I think.
Yeah, well, probably.
I don't want her to read my book, and Andy, I wouldn't want her to read yours either.
I've told my mom, and I was like, you know, I'm glad that you approve of my writing, but please don't read my books. Yeah. I think she read it for a few pages of Blade of the Destroyer, and you know, she's my mom, so there's no way she's into dark fantasy. You know, fantasy, much less dark fantasy. So, you know, I think she's got them all on her Kindle and never read them.
I remember I had her read my short story, Jesse, and I was in the kitchen, and I just heard her say, "Mark Stephen Collier, what is this? Why did you have to kill people with broken beer bottles? What is this?" I was like, oh, well, don't go to chapter 3.
Right.
So anyway, so today is going to be a little bit different. I believe we've all agreed that we're going to do the excerpt first.
Yes, very excited about this one.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like saving the cream-filled middle, but instead of it being in the middle, it's like outside. Okay, never mind. Forget I said anything. Hopefully people understand me. Actually, I had a fan email me, and I was so shocked. First of all, I'm like, how did you get my email? I guess it's not too hard to find. And It was like I bring the quirkiness to the episode or something, and I was like, "Is that a compliment? Or are you calling me retarded?"
Just take it as a compliment. It probably wasn't meant as one, but take it as one anyway.
What about that time somebody posted on our Facebook, because I have like Jesse, I have like this thing where I can't pronounce words correctly.
Okay.
Because I read them and in my head I'm pronouncing them correctly. So you never hear about what was last week's wyvern, but it's wyvern.
Yeah, wyvern and viscount.
Viscount.
And then even after I corrected you, you kept saying viscount.
What is it then?
Viscount. The S is silent.
What? Why even have a damn S in there?
I think it's French, dude.
Wow, that's a real hit to the ground. I had never seen Viscount in French, but you're probably right. But they posted that photo that said, he reads a lot if he can't pronounce the word correctly or something. That was funny. Okay, that was my tangent for the week. I like that, Andy.
Tangent number one of many.
Yeah, you said last time like it was just gonna be a one thing, but it's never one.
Yeah, we know it's going off the rails if Jesse's the one who says, "All right, guys, reel it back in." You know?
Already, I thought you were talking. My girlfriend's name is Jessie.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, it's Jessica, but I call her Jessie. So, and I'm actually trying to. Tangent number 2. I'm trying to talk her. I'm trying to talk her into naming our son Jesse. I love the name.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, in my case, Jesse is short for Jessica too. So.
Is it really?
No, it's not.
I wasn't going to say a damn word. I was one of those boys in middle school that was always looking up the word gullible because people were telling me it wasn't in the dictionary.
Right.
Every time. And I would still believe it. I'm like, this dictionary's wrong. It has it in there. We should contact Merriam-Webster.
I did it a couple of times before I got wise. And, 5, 6, 7 maybe.
Yeah.
Years old, I mean, not number of times looking it up.
Yeah. Okay, I am ready I have the excerpt up.
Yeah. All right. So, Jesse, you are the director. Tell us which parts to read. Do you want to read the narrator or one of the characters? You lead us.
Okay, so I will read. I'll be the narrator. And then I don't know who wants Rafe. Who wants to get beat up?
I feel like that's Stevie's role.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's me.
Then Steve, you'll be Rafe. And Andy, you'll be Smear.
Okay. Now, what kind of character is Smear? Is he like a rough kind of guy, like a dock worker?
No. Smear is he's a spy. He's a master spy.
Okay.
So we're talking about somebody that's very smooth, very quiet, very funny. Dreyark. Oh yeah, we gotta have somebody do Dreyark too.
I'll do him as well.
Okay, Dreyark, on the other hand, is a brute. He's big, he's violent, and he's used to commanding people around. So,
what kind of a person is he? Is he like a guard or?
He's Dreyark is a leader of men. He's like a general.
Okay.
He gets a lot of respect from his people, and he's a patriot. Up and down, he is all the way through. He is a patriot.
All right.
So,
okay, and what about Smear?
Rafe.
I'm sorry, Rafe.
Rafe is a leader, and he's very wise. He's from an immortal race, and he's over 10,000 years old. He's very reasonable and logical. And he as well is a good leader. So
channel your inner Elrond, Stevie.
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
So is he like a young 10,000-year-old or?
Yeah. If 10,000 can be young, he's older. He's mature.
Okay.
He's an older guy.
Okay.
So
I got you.
Let's do this.
Okay. I'm nervous. All right.
All right. Do we need any context to this story, or are we good to go?
Okay, so the last time Rafe and Dreyarch were together, Rafe did something that hurt Dreyarch's nation. It was a misunderstanding, but Dreyarch is furious about it still, even though it's been years. He's furious about it, and he does not want Rafe in his life. And Rafe has come to gather him. There is an evil rising, and he needs Dreyarch to fight by his side. So he has come to talk Dreyarch into joining him. And this is how that conversation goes.
Okay. Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Do this.
They love me here. Who's the narrator?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
I say the Rafe said. Okay, Rafe said.
Yes.
Sorry, I'll get it.
Oh, no problem.
I bet.
Smear replied. Two guards nodded, sleeping over their spears. Garrison would be furious if he saw that. Rafe stepped quietly past them and opened the wide doors to the stalwart. The scent of heavily spiced food struck Rafe in the face, along with the cheers and drinking songs. The gloom of the stalwart hid them. When Smear closed the door, Rafe decided that this was indeed a bad idea. Pickaxes flew towards targets on the wall. Drinking competitions raged in every corner. Children ran wild like packs of hunting dogs on the scent of some quarry. Over it all rang the cacophony of songs in a cloud of deep and high voices, fast and slow rhythms, cheerful to desolate dirges. Smear shoved Rafe as a pick stuck the door where his head had been. Smear grabbed the pick and with effort jerked it free. The thing looked ludicrous in his hands, reducing him to the size of a child. The cheers near the boxing ring slowly died. The heavy thunks of picks on the target ceased, and one by one the songs wound down as all eyes slowly swept from their revelry to the two standing at the door. At the back of the hall, sat a semicircle of 7 thrones, many empty. The elders of the hall stood as grumbles of discontent rolled like approaching thunder. Rafe threw back his hood and let his face show. He swept his hair from his eyes and smiled sheepishly at the largest of the elders. The man turned to the high elder, who nodded. The big man turned back to Rafe with blood on his mind.
You come here. You dare to walk into this stalwart after what you did.
He stepped from the podium and stormed forward.
You have no illusions of getting out of here alive, do you? You're not that arrogant, are you? Rafe Ivory Fist. Dreyarch, how long has it been?
Smear said. Dreyarch did not turn his gaze from Rafe.
It has been too long, old friend. Help yourself to the hospitality of the stalwart while I break this man apart. Thanks.
Smear said. He patted Rafe on the back as he walked away.
Good luck.
Smear said. He found a chair near the boxing ring and was handed a mug. He looked past the lip of the cup with a grin on his face and blew into the steaming hot ale. Dreyarch flexed his hands and Rafe held his palms out.
I did not come here to fight.
Dreyarch grabbed Rafe's collar and punched him in the gut. The air rushed from his body in a great whoosh, and Rafe doubled over in pain. Dreyarch gripped him by the collar and the belt. He tossed him across the room, upsetting tables and throwing food and ale in a storm. Rafe crashed to the ground and rolled over. He kicked his legs over his head and rolled to his feet as Dreyarch's next onslaught arrived. Rafe backed from the fist, but missed his swing away from the kick that dropped him to the ground. Rafe struggled to his feet as Dreyarch grabbed his hair. A knee to the face broke Rafe's nose and set his eyes to tearing. Dreyarch grabbed and hefted him in the air. The world rolled, and Dreyarch's back came down hard on a table. The table shattered under his weight, and the air knocked from him again. A ring of faces stared down at him, including Smear, who shook his head.
You've got to move faster. You can't let him get a hold on you.
Smear stepped aside as the crowd parted for Dreyarch, who scooped Rafe up from his back. Rafe connected a punch to Dreyarch's face, not knowing which had been hurt the most, the fist or the face. The latter seemed unaffected by the blow. Drayak grabbed Rafe and hoisted him atop his shoulders. He marched a few steps before tossing Rafe like a sack into a heap in the center of the boxing ring. The crowd grunted and cried in delight, and Rafe rose on shakily feet and stared at Drayak. The man unwound his tiger-skin toga, dropping the massive stuffed head of the beast to the ground, where scantily clad women fought over it. The rippling physique of Drayak made Rafe's head hurt, and he sighed as he took his robe off and tossed it to the floor outside the ring, where men trod on it underfoot with grimy boots. Drayak stomped to the ring's ropes and ducked under. He cracked his enormous knuckles and grinned down at Rafe.
So this is how we will settle this thing between us, as brutes, not men,
Rafe said.
I know nothing of settling debts with you, Ivory Fist. All I know is I long to break that ugly face of yours before I tossed you out of this stalwart.
Rafe backed up to the ring's ropes and looked for Smear, who held a cube of cheese in salute. Rafe pulled a sarcastic smile across his face and peeled off his shirt. He looked down at his thin, lightly muscled chest and shook his head. Rafe dodged and sidestepped the first of the punches. He dropped what he felt was a hefty blow on Drayak's kidney as he slipped behind him. Drayak flew his arms back, catching Rafe with an elbow to the side of the face. Rafe stumbled back, caught by the ropes.
My daughter would be ashamed to hit like that, Ivory Fist.
The crowd laughed and Rafe cursed.
Is she more reasonable? Send her out here to talk sense while her idiot father blusters and swaggers,
Rafe said. A knot of fear tied around him, and he groaned as Drayak stomped closer. Rafe ducked and spun away, retreating to the far side of the ring and shaking his head. He looked down at Smear, who tossed another cube of cheese in his mouth. He attempted to speak around the bite, but Rafe could not hear over the crowd.
What?
He asked. Smear washed the cube down with steaming ale.
Hit more, talk less.
Smear said with a wink.
This is ridiculous,
he said, turning to Drayak. With a blur, a blow detonated across Rafe's face that seemed to come from a giant comprised of stone. He stumbled back to bounce off the ropes. No mortal can hit that hard. The second blow connected with his jaw and lifted him from the ground. He flipped over the ring to land on the floor at Smear's feet.
Get hit less. Pick him up, throw him back in here,
Drayak said to the crowd. They grabbed Rafe with hard pinching hands and tossed him back into the ring. He struggled to his feet and squared his shoulders. He had been in more pain, but he couldn't remember when. He stared through swollen eyes at the serving girl who winked at him. She held a great mug of steaming ale above the table before turning it over, pouring its contents on the tabletop. The edge of the granite tabletop had been carved with a lip, and ale pooled, bringing the whole table to steaming. A plate of smoking meat and piping hot vegetables was set down before him, and he looked at it as if he would be sick. Smear grabbed his meat and dipped it in the ale. He ate it, dripping ale and sauce down his chin. He smiled.
Garrison, this is amazing. What is it?
The High Elder looked from Rafe where he had locked his iron gaze to Smear. Mycenae's recipe. He made it for us every time we went hunting. There was real pain in the man's expression, and Smear nodded with a solemn look.
May that hunt resume soon,
Smear said. Drayak spoke around the raw meat held to his eye.
Why are you here, Ivory Fist?
His question held none of the anger he had shown before, and Rafe looked the man in the eyes.
Minden Keep has fallen, its inmates freed. They are going to kill my king unless I can stop it. I figured you might want in.
Why would you figure something like that?
Drayak asked.
Because Julius Chris will wield the blade.
The crowd gathered around the table whispered a name. Reghar, they said quietly. Drayak looked to Garrison, who nodded and walked away.
I'm with you. What do you need?
Drayak said.
How many men do you command?
Rafe asked.
I can summon 50 Ghanaians, angry and chomping.
Good. We will likely need them all.
Okay,
Nice.
That was cool.
That was fun.
That was cool.
That was awesome that they went from well, you know, it's a very, I know it's a Viking feel. You know how they go from fighting to sitting, you know, and sharing a meal together. That's like classic Vikings. I don't know what other cultures in medieval Europe would have that, but that was
Yeah.
It was that was like, I don't know how else to describe it. So high fantasy, like that you must be a dungeon master because
Matter of fact, I've been a dungeon master since I was 6.
yeah, I
and
can tell.
And I'm 41, so yeah.
Nice. Yeah. It's very fun, very adventurous. You also use a lot of good vocabulary, and I'm wondering if you like that kind of stuff because you have the words on your wall.
Yeah, around my office, I have many words. I think like 30 of them that I've printed off on a white background and framed to hang around the room. They're my favorite words in the English language, or words that mean a lot to me. And not necessarily words that I use a lot, just words that I find interesting and that I love to say. I love the meaning, you know, stuff like that. I'm, you know, like every writer is a student of words, and we have our favorite words. So I decided to celebrate that in my office. So all these back here are printed words, and there's a bunch of them, and then like I said, they're all over my office.
What's the one on the bottom right?
Kitty Wampus.
Kitty Wampus.
What is that?
That means Kitty Wampus means slightly off kilter, slightly crooked, and
where's it from?
When it's a Southern term. And when we printed it so that the words don't necessarily line up. They're wrong.
Ah,
and
that's great.
When you have the frame perfectly balanced and perfectly centered, the words look off balance. So
that's awesome. Definitely married to a graphic designer.
Yeah,
I am. Yeah,
I never would have thought about doing something like that, but I like the idea. Why is ugly up there?
Because it's an ugly word. If you look at it aesthetically, the word itself, as written down, is really an ugly word. So it looks the way it's defined. Some words you can look at. Some words you can look at that are written down on the page. You can look at them and you can see that they are truly beautiful words. Visually stunning words, and you get that. I get a lot of that because I have a graphic designer as a wife, but I think about the way that words look on the page a lot, and some words are just beautiful words and some are really not. And ugly is a word that is very unattractive to look at. I know it's weird, but
No, I don't think so.
I'm obsessed with words. So
aren't we all? I like that. And the font that you use, if you're listening now, he uses different fonts for each word that he has up on his wall. And honor looks very like honorable. I don't know how else to describe it. So, Andy, do we have a word of the day today?
Yeah. Speaking of words, the word for the day. The word for the day is archaic.
No, wait, dude. That was my word.
Sweet.
I'm not lying to you. I swear to God. I was just like, if he doesn't have it, we'll just use archaic. That's actually my favorite word.
That is a fantastic word. It's archaic. A fantastic word.
Yeah.
And it's one that's not often used or used correctly. It means marked by the characteristics of an earlier period or antiquated. Now, a lot of people use it to mean ancient, and archaic does, as it says, antiquated means ancient, but it can denote a specific period. Like it's actually used to pertaining to the style of Greece from the middle 7th to the early 5th century when it's talking about like art, painting, and sculpture. So it's usually used to refer to a specific period in history. So if you talk about, the archaic culture or archaic books or paintings or artwork or spells, it's usually referring to a specific period in time in whatever fantasy novel. You know, whether it's the first war, the first world war in the fantasy world, or the first, you know, the cataclysm or whatever. You know, that's usually referring to that specific period.
Right.
I'm still shook up about how you chose that word. That blows my mind. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry. What were we going to say, Jesse?
It's a archaic. Is also oftentimes used to describe words that aren't used anymore. They're part of an archaic vocabulary. So my writers group is often talking to me about how this particular word isn't a modern word, it's an archaic word, and you know, back and forth like that. But I think that archaic vocabulary is important in fantasy writing to a certain extent. So
yeah, it's interesting. I actually watched a video where the guy, or some historian or linguist or something, he read Shakespeare in the proper Shakespearean English intonation. Like when people read Shakespeare now, or they perform Shakespeare, it's very poetic and flowing. Whereas the way it was back when Shakespeare actually wrote it, it was much more like street, or to quote young Stevie here, it was much more thug. You know, like the voice was deeper. The posture, instead of, you know, this high posture, it was, you know, leaning over the crowd and talking in this deep tone of voice. It was a really interesting comparison between the two.
that sounds really cool.
That's interesting. So he wasn't being proper whenever he was writing these. It just sounds proper to us.
Yeah, exactly. He the way we hear things now is very different. Like if you would have, you know, heard Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales recited or read or performed back in the 14th century, it would be totally different from the way it's done now on stage, just because the way people talked. You know, the English language has evolved. It's number one, it's you know, taken so many different words from other languages, and that has shaped its, you know, the pronunciation, the sentence structure, and all of that. I love languages, or I'm good at languages naturally. So I was born speaking Japanese, learned Spanish, some Portuguese, some French, some German, you know, a little smattering of everything. And it's interesting to see how each language has their own cadence, their own rhythm. Like I can't do the Japanese accent properly, or the Japanese accent speaking English properly, because I don't know the cadence, the rhythm that Japanese speak the language properly. When I was speaking Japanese, I tend to speak it with the cadence of someone who speaks English. Same with Spanish. Or you know, after 15 years of living in in Mexico, I've adapted to the way of speaking here, but it still comes with more of the English cadence. And in my mind, I'm punctuating the sentences the way I would in English, rather than speaking like a Spanish speaker would.
Wait, do you speak fluent Spanish?
Yeah. Sí, señor.
What? No way.
It took me 2 years to learn.
Okay, you know, I've heard similar, but I always thought it would, you know, they say 2 years, but it really takes like 4 or 5. But you really, but you also, you're all around it though, aren't you?
Yeah. The thing is, you can get away saying you speak fluent Spanish after a couple of years, or you know, I got away with it. But the truth is that you never ever learn everything. You know, every city has their own expressions. Every country has their own way of saying things. Like as an example, in Spain, the Spanish say coger, like to pick something up. Whereas in Mexico, coger is to fuck. So when I hear a Spanish person talking and they say, you know, cógeme eso, instead of pass me something, it sounds like, you know, something different. So it's nearly impossible to learn 100% of any language. I mean, we're still learning English all the time.
I thought you said,
as is evidenced by our pronunciation of the word Viscount.
Wow. You know what? I've been very nice to you today, and this is how you're paying me. What I was gonna say is, I thought you were like, I thought I heard "cojero mi asshole," so I was like, "What is he about to say on air? What is he about to say?"
I'd like to step back for a minute and talk about the reading of Shakespeare and Chaucer for a minute. I think that part of the problem is that when you're reading it authentically, like Andy's talking about, there's a certain level of respect to Shakespeare that the professors talk about, and the teachers talk about that stop you from reading it gangster. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain amount of, this is Shakespeare. You're supposed to have respect for Shakespeare instead of reading it like a thug, So I think that's part of the problem. But anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, Andy, do you want to lead us in today's topic?
Yeah, well, actually, this is Jesse's suggestion. Jesse, you were talking about the unity versus divisiveness, or coming together. I put the title of the article is "It's Time to Come," or the podcast, "It's Time to Come Together." I mean, you look at the world around us, and everyone is not disunited, but there's so many different things that can separate us. Religion. There's hundreds of religion, and even the biggest religion, Christianity, has Catholicism and Protestantism, and then you've got all of the subcategories of that, and then you've got the sects and the cults and the branches and the offshoots, and there's so many things in just this one topic that can divide people. So what were you thinking about with the unity theme?
Okay, well, I'm thinking about American politics and American activism, and there's so many things and so many topics that divide America right now. And people are so vehement about them that it's impossible to talk about this with anybody who sees the issue differently than you. So what you get is a bunch of people getting together that all agree on the same thing and talking each other up and whipping themselves into a frenzy about it. And that only creates more division within the people.
Right. It's called the echo chamber. I know that was a big thing during the latest election, where people were saying, all of my friends on Twitter or Facebook were talking, let's all go vote for Hillary. The more people voted for Trump, and it was just these people. They had this echo chamber where in their little social circle or whatever, everyone was, they had the same effect or the same political affiliations. But it never went beyond that. They were so uninformed because they only kept within that little echo chamber.
Right. This is actually why I picked this particular excerpt from the book, because in this book, there's a lot of that. There's everybody, all the main people in the book have different agendas, and they have different projects that they're working on, and they have different lives. But because of this growing danger, they all set their differences aside. Like Dreyarch sets his differences aside so that he can work with Rafe so that they can put this evil down. So all through the book, you have these people who are really believe one thing or another, or they have lives that do one thing or another, and they're setting those things aside to find a common ground. I heard about this a while ago, and I pulled it up and watched it today. There's a video, you can find it on YouTube, called Power of Communication. Black Lives Matter activists were invited on stage at a pro-Trump rally. Have you heard about this?
No.
Okay, so there's a rally, a Trump rally set up by a guy named Tommy Gunn, and it's called the Mother of All Rallies in Washington, D.C. So he has all these Trump people yelling Trump things, and then Black Lives Matter shows up, and they're all yelling, and it's what you would expect, they're yelling curse words at each other and threatening violence, and fists are in the air and all this kind of stuff. And then Tommy Gunn says, bring them up. He says, bring them up here. He says, we're going to celebrate freedom of speech. So bring them up here. And the president of Black Lives Matter gets onto the pro-Trump stage. Okay. And he says, the very first thing out of his mouth is, I'm an American. And both sides erupt in cheers and applause. And then he starts making his case. And he says, at first he says, in America, when we see something wrong, we fix it. And everybody goes crazy again, because you can agree, they could agree on those things.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not here to talk about Black Lives Matter's agenda or the Trump agenda. I don't want to have that discussion. This is not me trying to push a political agenda at all. This is just me talking about the fact that these two highly volatile crowds got together and talked about what Black Lives Matter wanted, and they talked back and forth about the pros and cons of it. At the end, you have the leader of the president of the Black Lives Matters group was named Hawk Newsom, and you've got Tommy Gunn on the other side, and they sound like superheroes.
Yeah.
And in their groups, they are superheroes, you know. And these two guys, Tommy's clapping for Hawk, and they shake hands at the end of it and walk away. And you've got, if you watch the video, you've got there's groups, there's like the president of Black Lives Matters is shaking hands with a militia leader that leads 4,000 militia people. There's a biker group called Bikers for Trump, and they have the Black Lives Matters president holding his son, holding the biker's son, and they're taking pictures. He's holding his little boy. And you can see that because they decided to celebrate freedom of speech and they allowed them to get on stage and talk, you've got this coexistence between these two groups, and that's when change can occur. You can't change each other by yelling and screaming and cursing at each other. You can't change any views until you sit down and talk like men and women in this very respectful tone. You know, I think Facebook is somewhat to blame because you can say things on Facebook that you'd never say to somebody's face. You know,
True.
If I sit down from somebody who has a different political belief as me, if I sit down to them with a beer and we're having a conversation about it, if I say some of the things that are said on Facebook, I'm going to get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have a certain amount of respect for that person's viewpoints just to sit and have a conversation with them. But on Facebook, we don't get that. On Facebook, we get all these polarized views and nobody's listening to anybody. And
Yeah,
I just went off for a long time. So.
No, it's good. It's sort of like in a relationship. You know, if one of the people in the relationship or the marriage is refusing to change their stance, refusing to see the other side of things, one person's going to be changing, and eventually they're going to say, "Screw it, I'm done. I'm done."
Exactly.
Whereas if you can say, "Okay, look, we need to meet each other halfway. We need to find some common ground," like you were saying, a way to compromise on something, and not necessarily compromising who you are, compromising your beliefs. You may never change the things you believe in, your personality, your attitudes, your religious beliefs, your politics. You could be, you could vote for whoever you vote for, but as long as you can be respectful and you can find some common ground in some way to say, yeah, let's try to meet in the middle. That's sort of the way to overcome all of these things that would divide us.
Right. If you go back to the founding fathers, you'll find that a lot of them hated each other, and they had completely different views on how America should be set up and how America should be run, and they had these differing views. But the nation, if you look at how they figured all of it out, the nation was built on compromise. It was built on, this group saying, okay, you don't want this, but you can come this far on this topic and we'll meet you halfway. The nation was built on compromise. And if we can't find any compromise, then none of this stuff is ever going to change.
Yeah, very true. I mean, they do say that nothing unites like a common enemy.
Right.
So
exactly.
And
Yeah.
you see that a lot in pretty much every fantasy or science fiction or fiction. Basically, there's always someone bigger to fight. Kind of like how your two characters there, Dreyarch and Wraith, they were able to put aside their differences because of this threat. And maybe they never become friends. Maybe they never truly get over their differences throughout the book, but they can put it aside long enough to deal with the common threat.
Right. And that's a thread that runs all the way through the book. You know, we don't need to agree on everything, and we don't need to be absolute, buddies, but we do need to agree that there's a problem and we need to fix it, and that's what the main message of Song is. So
very cool.
So isn't it Wraith though that caused all these issues?
Well, okay, so Rafe was away from the prison that he created, Minden Keep. He was away from the prison, and the prison was broken into and all the inmates were freed. So in that way, because he was absent, he created the problem. And the problem between him and Dreyarch the problem between him and Dreyarch is his fault, but I don't want to get into how it works, but it was actually a misunderstanding. Dreyarch was trying to do the right thing, and in doing that, he set the nation back. So Dreyarch is holding this thing against Rafe, but in actuality, it was really nobody's fault that it happened at all. So
okay.
Very cool.
That makes sense. I also like the idea of a common enemy. I hate that it's been done so many times before, but it's such a good trope. I really think that might become part of the Four Territories series. But anyways, yes. So Andy, is there anything else you want to add, or Jesse, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, Jesse, why don't you tell our viewers / listeners where they can find all of your books?
Okay. I'm on Amazon, definitely. Just type in Jesse Teller. It's real easy to remember. Just type in Jesse Teller, and you're gonna find all of my stuff. And I'm on all of the major ebook organizations, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. I'm on CreateSpace. You can find me on CreateSpace. There's I have a page on Facebook called Jesse Teller Path to Paralesque, and Paralesque is the name of the world that I'm writing in right now. Jesse Teller Path to Paralesque, and you can find that on Facebook and follow me from there. And yeah.
Awesome.
And
then
I have a website called jesseteller.com where my blog is and all that stuff. So that's basically where you find me.
Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I don't do much on Twitter, but I am on Twitter, and I can be followed on Twitter. Again, just Jesse Teller.
Awesome. Well, Andy, is there anything else you'd like to add?
That's it for me.
All right.
All right. Well, we really want to thank you, Jesse, for being on the show. It's been a blast. I learned a lot. So it was super interesting hearing about the division and Unison. And we also want to congratulate Andy again on his awesome award. It was super cool to see that on Facebook. Made my day, even though I wasn't the one. But it felt like I was winning through Andy, so it's all right.
Yeah.
You're a winner by association, Stevie.
Yes. That's how all my accomplishments work.
Let's not forget to congratulate Stevie for his book coming out.
Oh yeah, the paperback.
Yes.
Very cool.
It feels so good against my skin.
and before we degenerate to Authors After Dark.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching and listening to the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We really appreciate you. Please like and subscribe if you are watching through YouTube. That really helps us out. We will see you again next. Is it Wednesday, Andy?
Yeah, I think we're going to do a Wednesday slightly earlier at around 3:30 Pacific time, 5:30 Central or 6:30 Eastern, because we have an author, another one from across the pond, from England, the wonderful Rosemary Johns. And we've got a really interesting topic to talk about, which I don't remember what it is offhand.
It's vampires.
No, it's not vampires.
Jesse, Andy loves vampires.
I've got my next installment of this series is actually about vampires.
There you go.
I did research. They're not sparkly.
No.
They're not sparkly. I did research on the original legend. So everything in the book is based on the original vampire legend.
That's cool.
So,
we need some of that.
Yeah.
Yes, very cool. Yes, so the topic for Wednesday is challenging our world's small lies. I'm excited about that one.
Yes. Like we're all good authors. No, I'm kidding. All right. That's it for this fantastical episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I'm going to go use my rescue inhaler like I'm not dork enough as it is. Have a great night, everybody. We will see you next week.
Bye.
I feel like